Well, growing outrage right now over the Obama administration's handling of the Fort Hood massacre. The Defense Department refusing to classify the shootings that left 13 people dead as a terror attack, despite pleas from victims' families and survivors that they want those wounded or those killed to be awarded the Purple Heart, among other designations. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham wants the administration to reconsider that decision. He joins us now on the phone. And Senator Graham, it's great to talk to you about this because you served in the military. You were an Air Force lawyer as well, so you have a real good sense of, what are the designations and the importance of rules as well. So why do you disagree with the administration's characterizing of this attack, and why do you think it should be different?
Well, I think the family's request to have the family members receive compensation, be awarded the Purple Heart, makes sense to me based on the facts. It's not my goal to interfere with the court-martial. The court-martial is moving forward. Major Hassan will be vigorously defended and aggressively prosecuted. But I think an administrative determination by the Department of Defense to call it a workplace act of violence is the wrong course to take vis-a-vis the victims. So I'll be working with members of Congress and hopefully the administration, Romney administration hopefully, but if it's the Obama administration, to designate this an act of terrorism for benefit purposes and recognition purposes of the victims.
So the Pentagon says, a spokesman from the Pentagon says that the survivors of the incident are eligible to the same medical benefits as any service member. They also point out that redesignating this crime would somehow interrupt the court-martial process that is taking place. Right. Can you tell us about that? What does that mean?
I don't buy that. We're not redesignating the crime. You're not changing the charge sheet. You're looking at the classification by the Department of Defense in terms of benefits. You're not allowed to get the Purple Heart for workplace violence. In my view, this was part of the war on terror. The war on terror moved home. There's more of this to come. Unfortunately, our own citizens in other wars have become fifth column elements, that takes up the enemy's cause. And, when American citizens joined the Germans, and if there's an attack on an American, it was part of the German efforts to undermine us. The radical Islamists are trying to recruit American citizens. So I see this as the war coming to our backyard. The charge sheet's not affected. Major Hassan is going to get a full defense. I'm not asking them to change the charge sheet or the court-martial. I am asking them to reconsider the designation. The Purple Heart beneficiary has different benefits than someone who's injured in the workplace. And I think the war came home to Fort Hood, and we need to recognize that.
Senator Graham, you haven't responded on the record to some of this new information as of yet. Broadly speaking, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's further proof of a terrorist attack being reported to our officials in Washington in real time. That just as soon as the attack occurred, people from Libya were transmitting via email that this was a terrorist attack in progress. They named the people involved, the Al-Qaeda splinter group, and my question becomes now, why wasn't the counterterrorism group activated? There's working groups within our government whose job it is to deal with terrorist incidents. Why wasn't some terrorist working group activated advising the president of how can we help these poor people? And why did we not have any military assets or CIA assets positioned on 9/11 of all dates to come to the aid of these people for over 7 hours? So it's important. It's another piece of evidence. It was never a spontaneous riot. It was being reported in real time, and it makes the statement of President Obama that my administration will share every detail with the American public untrustworthy. This administration is stonewalling. I wrote a letter to the CIA director, to our director of national intelligence, asking for any information you provided the president of the attacks in April and June. I wrote a letter to the president. Did you know the consulate had previously attacked in April and June?
Any response to that, Senator Graham?
They're stonewalling me. They're leaking memos to Washington Post reporters and columnists. The White House is trying to leak this talking points memo from the CIA that it was a riot. Well, this is another piece of evidence. There was never a riot spurned by a video. It was a pre-planned terrorist attack. They named the people who were responsible for the attack while it's going on. And why was nothing done to help these people?
Let's talk a little bit about that point, because that's something that Ambassador Bolton brought up to us last hour as well, Senator Graham, and I think it's crucial because a lot of the conversation about the Benghazi attack is in the rearview mirror, looking backwards, and we have a responsibility to look forwards as to the path ahead for this country and national security. One of the questions that you just raised is, if terror attack was even mentioned, why weren't more forces, whatever they were, sent in to help our people on the ground there? And the question then surfaces, are we truly prepared at this time, under this administration, to respond to a terror attack of any sort that threatens us overseas or at home?
I know for a fact that we have in place a high-value interrogation team made up of FBI, CIA, and DOD officials whose job it is to go out and gather information from a terrorist suspect. I also know that we have a counterterrorism working group under the National Security Advisor whose job it is to come up with responses to terrorist attacks. Why wasn't that group activated? And if it wasn't activated, that is just a really national security malpractice. After 9/11, how could we not be prepared to deal with an attack against American interests at home and abroad? And why did they pick the narrative to explain this attack as a mob riot video? Because if it was in fact an al-Qaeda inspired attack, so much for the narrative that al-Qaeda has been dismantled. So this is disturbing. We see in real time, Jenna, proof positive that it was a terrorist attack. People are telling us so on the ground. Why didn't we respond in real time? Why didn't we call the working group together? And how could we have left these people so unprotected, undefended for over 7 hours on September the 11th of all days?
Some important questions. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came out earlier today, said there's cherry picking of information taking place, and they're still gathering information to figure out.
Can I respond to that?
Sure, quickly, Senator.
The cherry picking of information was saying it was a mob, a riot spurned by video. That was cherry picking. They're stonewalling us. They're not answering. They're not transparent. They're not being honest. They're not sharing information. I don't trust these people. They're covering themselves in the worst way. 4 people are dead, and we're not getting any real response for them. Thank God for a media that cares.
And what happens next? That's one of the big questions that we continue to talk about. Senator Graham, pleasure having you today. Thank you for taking the time.